When families get together for holidays, they usually plan fun things to make special memories. The Jones family, for example, chose to explore Nutty Putty Cave, hoping for a good time. But little did they know, something really sad was going to happen. This is the story of the terrible Nutty Putty Cave accident. Jon Jones was excited for some family fun when they decided to check out Nutty Putty Cave in the Utah desert near Salt Lake City. He hadn't been to this cave before, but he and his brother Josh used to explore a bunch of caves when they were younger. Even though Jon considered himself an experienced cave explorer, he hadn't done much of it lately. Life got busy, he got married, had a kid, and was now studying to be a doctor at the University of Virginia. So, exploring caves wasn't part of his regular routine anymore. During Thanksgiving break, he was heading home to chill with family for the holiday. They planned to spend a day hiking and exploring Nutty Putty, which most people thought was a cave for beginners. The main parts of the cave were interesting for everyone. There was a place called the maze room with openings and tunnels around big rocks. And then there was the slide, a big sloping area where the whole room went down at a 45 degrees angle with a rope to help you navigate. This cave system had maps for most of the easy-to-explore areas. Some parts were famous for being tough, like the birth canal or the aorta crawl. Those spots were narrow and hard to get through, so only experienced cave explorers tried to tackle them. Even though people knew about the challenges, some still ended up stuck in these tight tunnels. Nutty Putty had recently reopened to the public after being closed for a few years because people kept getting stuck in those tricky spots. While some could pass through, others found that no matter how hard they tried, their shoulders or hips just wouldn't fit. If someone got wedged in these narrow spaces, they needed serious help to back out. Because of these situations, a new rule was put in place: you needed a special entry permit, and each group had to have 2 experienced cave explorers. Josh got a permit for a group to explore on Tuesday, just before Thanksgiving on November 24, 2009. Jon's pregnant wife, Emily, stayed home with their 1-year-old daughter Lizzie to have a more laid-back evening with the in-laws. The group of 11 family and friends started exploring the easier parts of the cave. Eventually, Jon and his brother Josh, along with 2 friends, set out to find more challenging tunnels. They had heard about the birth canal and checked the map to find it. This passage was known to be a long, tight space with an especially narrow part at the end. If you could squeeze through that tight spot, there was a small room at the end where you could stand up and turn around. They were aware that the birth canal would be narrow and might cause panic, even for experienced cave explorers. They split up to find this specific tunnel. Jon and Josh went down the left passage, navigating through a small tunnel for about 15 feet. It went up and down in different elevations. In the next 10 feet, there were rocks sticking out and tight squeezes that forced cavers to twist their bodies in various ways to get through, first the shoulders, then the hips, and finally twisting their legs in the right direction. It wasn't as simple as forcefully pulling your body through a tight hole. This part was called the corkscrew because those who had been through it were small and flexible, using all their skills to slowly maneuver through the nerve-wracking twists. After the corkscrew, the passage went up for another 5 feet or so, then turned down over a rock ledge with a sharp 90 degrees bend to the left. Until this point, explorers would use this small area after the corkscrew to turn back if needed and go back through the challenging section. 5 years earlier, a 16-year-old boy named Brock Clark got stuck in this corkscrew section. He was only 5 feet 7 inches tall and weighed 140 pounds, but got wedged when he tried to turn around. It took rescuers 14 hours to free him. Jon found himself in the exact spot where Brock got stuck trying to turn around. Since Jon was 6 feet tall and weighed 200 pounds, he knew turning around in this part of the tunnel wasn't an option for him. He was in a 12-inch high space with not enough room for his body to turn. He pushed forward to the ledge area and squeezed over the top of it. It was a tight spot to get through, but he thought he could see it opening up below. He sucked in his stomach and pressed himself through the tight spot, pulling forward on the rocks in front of him. Now, he was moving headfirst at a downward angle, but it seemed like there was a spot ahead where he could turn around. Jon didn't know it, but no one else had ever gone over this ledge before. He was in completely unknown territory. Even though he was in a super tight and uncomfortable position, Jon stayed calm. He was sure there would be an opening ahead the whole time. He thought he was in a part of the birth canal where many cavers had felt stuck in the narrow tunnel but ended up being okay once they got to the other side. After squeezing through a tight spot, he started sliding toward the bottom of the tunnel. He was almost doing a handstand, trying to hold his body up and figure out how to push backward. He still couldn't turn, and now he was upside down. Gravity was pulling his 200-pound body against the weakening strength of his arms. He yelled to his brother Josh, telling him not to follow but to go back out. They talked about Jon's options and decided that moving forward to try to turn around was the best bet. At this point, he was collapsing onto his shoulders and head and needed to make a move to get out of this vertical position. His headlamp showed him a hole in the floor ahead, which might lead to a bigger space. He felt a bit more hopeful, thinking they'd be laughing about this adventure over Thanksgiving dinner. Jon managed to make the slight turn and headed towards the hole. Exactly how he ended up in this tunnel hole is unknown. It's thought that he might have slipped, hit his head, and got stuck in the tight space. Another possibility is that he looked into the hole but misjudged it, thinking it was an opening and not just a dead-end crack. Either way, Jon found himself in a small opening at the bottom of this tunnel, and it was incredibly narrow, just 18 inches by 10 inches, not much bigger than a laptop screen. Jon was wedged nearly completely upside down at a 70-degree angle. He tried for a while to push himself back up out of the hole, but it was exhausting. His arms were stuck in awkward positions, one folded under his chest and the other trapped on a rock by his side. He strained against the walls and quickly realized that all his effort wouldn't move him back up to the shallow tunnel. His calves and feet were still free in the passage, but his legs were wedged on the narrow side of the hole, only 8 inches wide. He started yelling for Josh again. His brother knew he was trying to turn around, so his yells weren't a good sign. Josh made his way back into the tight space, navigating the corkscrew path, but this time he went in feet first. He followed the sound of Jon's voice, up over the ledge. He finally saw an alarming sight, the end of his brother's leg sticking out of the rock as if it had swallowed him whole. Josh inched forward until his feet could squeeze one of Jon's legs. He tried to grip and pull up while Jon pushed from his end. After several futile attempts, both were feeling exhausted and frustrated. Josh could see that this was very serious, and they needed professional help to get him out. They agreed that Josh should go get help, and Jon should try as much as possible to stay calm and relaxed while Josh went for help. One of the family friends went into the area to talk to Jon and reassure him that he wasn't alone. For several hours, Jon remained trapped upside down, mostly focused on the challenge of breathing. The crack squeezed his chest, allowing only shallow breaths. Surprisingly, all his attempts to move up actually settled him deeper into the crack. As time passed, gravity continued to pull him against the rough walls of the tunnel, tightening its grip on his exhausted body. Once help arrived, the first cave rescuer, Susie Matta, made her way to where Jon was stuck. It was now 12:30 in the morning, and Jon had been upside down for 3 hours. Susie, being 5 feet 3 inches tall, found it easier to navigate the corkscrew area. Ropes were tied to her ankles as a precaution in case she got stuck. She checked on Jon and assured him that they would get him out. He must have felt a small wave of relief, knowing that professional help had arrived and he would soon be free from this trap. Susie tied webbing straps around Jon's legs and then fed them back to the pit where the tunnel started. Several attempts were made to pull on the ropes and lift Jon back up and out of the crack. Unfortunately, there was too much friction on the ropes to effectively release Jon. He remained pinned without the use of his arms. After trying a few things and considering various options, they decided to use a pulley system to help lift Jon up and out. A pulley had successfully been used when Brock Clark was stuck 5 years before. Despite having a plan, the location was challenging to work in. Each piece of equipment had to be brought in from the entrance, taking nearly an hour to reach the other side of the corkscrew. The tunnel was extremely tight, and only smaller power tools could be carried in and out. Only one person could assist at a time, and they needed to be small or wiry to effectively move through the passage. It was just not an ideal situation. Installing each pulley took an incredibly long time. Meanwhile, the cavers tried to talk with Jon, comfort him, and share stories to keep him calm and engaged. Jon, a devout Mormon, spent time praying and singing to find solace in this unreal situation. Having spent the night upside down, he was showing signs of the physical toll on the body in this position. The human body isn't built to be upside down for extended periods. Jon's body had been fighting gravity for more than 12 hours. Being upside down was taking a toll on his circulatory system, designed to move blood forward through the body using pressure from the heart, valves, and fibrous vessels. This system balances pressure, gravity, and valves to ensure oxygen is available to all tissues and to remove toxins from the body through the kidneys. In Jon's case, his body had been struggling against gravity for too long. The brain isn't meant to handle this kind of fluid pressure. Fluids were building up in his lungs, and toxins were accumulating due to the lack of proper circulation. His organs were pressing on his lungs, making each breath an exhausting effort for muscles not designed for such strain. His breathing was slowing, and he was completely drained from the effort. Throughout the night, Jon went from being calm and clear-headed to helplessly thrashing his legs and hallucinating. It was painful for the rescuers to witness. They felt helpless, exhausted, and trapped themselves. The air in the cave was warm and damp, making it challenging to stay calm when restricted and unable to move or breathe properly. But the rescuers knew they could leave when necessary. Jon didn't have that luxury. He couldn't expand his chest to breathe, and the air around him was gradually losing its oxygen concentration. During this time, a wired telecom system was brought down to Jon. His wife spoke with him, encouraging him to hang on and stay faithful. Jon assured her that he would be out with her soon. It wasn't until 4 o'clock that day that they finally got the pulleys in place to move him. Ryan Schertz was in the tunnel when the system was ready to try. Jon's body had settled into the narrow side of the opening, so Ryan had to push his legs over while the team pulled from outside. Each heave moved him inch by inch up out of the hole. By this time, Jon's legs were in excruciating pain. A rope had been tied around them for hours as rescuers tried various methods to help him out. They were completely blue and had no discernible pulse, yet each tug had him calling out to stop because his nerves were ultra-sensitive at this point. They paused to give him a moment to gather himself and then tried again. It seemed to be working. Jon was finally being pulled up out of the hole. He was raised enough for Ryan to make eye contact with him and pass down a tube for him to drink Gatorade. This effort was extremely slow-going, and they were all exhausted from the challenging work. Ryan found himself in a tight tunnel just 12 inches high, with his head near Jon's legs as they slowly worked to extract him from the tight 10-inch crack. Despite some progress in lifting him up, they were no closer to getting him out. Jon's legs were hitting the low ceiling above his tunnel, and twisting them into the passage was impossible. He had no control over his legs now. After 19 hours upside down, without his ability to delicately bend his knees to the side, they were strongly considering breaking his legs to get him back into the passage because time was running out for Jon. Then, in a sudden moment of blinding pain, Ryan blacked out. When he came to, he was bleeding heavily and confused. The rope holding the pulley to a natural arch section in the cave broke, whipping the carabiner and pulley directly into Ryan's face. He suffered damage to his face, lip, and tongue, as well as a concussion. Ryan had to get out of there quickly. Jon found himself back where he started, completely wedged in the tunnel. The circulation to his arms was cut off, and his legs were completely dead. He was unable to help free himself in any way. This moment marked the final demise of Jon Jones. After Ryan was checked out in the pit and sent to the hospital, his father Dave took his place in the passage with Jon. It took an hour to re-establish the pulley lines, but Dave struggled to tie a rope around Jon's body. The rope couldn't get past his wedged torso, and throughout the operation, Jon remained unresponsive. The entire rescue required Jon's cooperation, but he was not able to respond. Once Jon's father exhausted himself pushing back into the 12-inch tunnel, he had to step out. Brandon Coles took his place and brought in the telecom system so Jon's family could talk to him. Despite Emily expressing her love and urging him to take a break and rest, Brandon could see what she couldn't. Jon was no longer responsive, and there were no signs of life. The rescue team gathered in the pit area and discussed the situation. It was decided that a medical professional needed to confirm Jon's passing. A paramedic was sent into the tight section to verify the suspected situation. On Wednesday, November 25th, at 11:56, Jon Jones was pronounced dead. The rescue teams had worked tirelessly for 24 hours straight to free Jon, but with his upside-down position, time ran out. Jon survived an extraordinary 27 hours in an inverted position, 3 times longer than predicted. The 6 rescue personnel who reached Jon in that rocky prison were truly heroic, facing unknown risks in an unmapped portion of the cave. They maintained a calm demeanor and never gave up on an apparently impossible rescue. After determining that recovering the body was impossible, Jon was left to rest in the Ed's Push section of the Nutty Putty cave for eternity. The entire cave system was closed off with concrete, never to be explored again. A plaque was placed there to commemorate the life of Jon Jones. That's a wrap for today's video. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below.